Great. Thanks everyone for being here. My name is Katie Wysocki and I am the Assistant Director in the Career Enrichment Network here at the College of the Liberal Arts. Today we have our series Alumni Career Conversations. We invite alumni mentors to join us on different industries and topics to share their experience and helpful advice for fellow Penn Staters. So today we have Brittany Maraldi with us. Brittany and I were just catching up on what feels like just yesterday is a long time ago. So thank you, Brittany, for being here. Brittany graduated from Penn State in 2018 with degrees in political science and criminology. In her time at Penn State, she was involved in organizations such as the Justice Association, Trilogy-thon.org, Phi Alpha Delta Law Fraternity, Liberal Arts Envoys, and currently she serves as an alumni mentor to the Penn State Liberal Arts students. She currently works as a paralegal at a nonprofit legal center serving victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. In addition to work full-time, she's also in her second year of law school at Pace Law School in White Plains, New York. So Brittany, thank you so much for being here. I will let you take over from here.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
I am so excited to be here. I took part in so many of these presentations and programs when I was at Penn State, and it really helped me to figure out my own career path. So I'm really excited that I'm able to hopefully help you do the same. Could you go to the next slide, please? So a little about me, which Katie already talked about. I graduated in 2018 with degrees in political science and criminology. I was quite involved in my time at Penn State doing all of the above, all of those listed there. I won't go through them again. I figured I would just, to show you that I'm not so out of college, I do remember some of the classes that I took, and some of my favorites were sexual and domestic violence, sentencing, terrorism, juvenile justice, and American politics. And for some reason, and I can't explain why, I still remember sexual and domestic violence was Crim 423 with Professor Karen Bloom, who was actually one of my law school recommendations. So not that far removed, everyone. Right now, I am in the part-time program at Pace Law School. And I can talk a little bit about that later on. So a little bit about what I do now. So I am a paralegal at Hope Store Legal Center, and Hope Store is an umbrella agency that serves victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Within the agency itself, they offer counseling, shelter, financial planning, career planning, children's counseling, and of course, legal services. So I'm just going to put this caveat out there that it's not a typical law firm or legal center. Everything that we do there is pro bono. So we don't actually have clients retaining us and paying for our services. Everything that we do is for clients who meet a certain financial requirement that qualify them for free legal services. And again, I can talk a little bit more about what that specifically looks like. But within Hope Store Legal Center, what I specifically work on are two areas of law, really. The first one is matrimonial law, which encompasses divorce, and then family law, which is custody, child support, and orders of protection. And in Pennsylvania, I believe they're called protection from abuse orders. And these are New York terms because that's where I'm based. But if anything doesn't translate over, just let me know. In addition to representation in those matters, we also help clients with criminal advocacy. So victims in criminal cases, we can advocate with the district attorney's office on their behalf. We also help with housing and landlord-tenant issues that arise from domestic violence situations, and also immigration issues. And then specifically my duties there, I support two attorneys. So we're a relatively small group. And it's very, very hands-on for me. So I am pretty much in charge of all of the intakes with any new client. So as soon as they call the office and say, I'm interested in legal services, they will talk to me and I will assess what sort of issues they have and what kind of case this is. From there, I'll usually calendar them. So I'll put them on our calendar to meet with the attorneys. I'll keep track of any deadlines for court or filing, and just maintain our calendar as a firm. I also do drafting and filing of motions. So I'll get into it a little bit more, but as to not be so in the weeds, when we're filing anything in court, usually I have the first draft of it. And then that goes to the attorneys for review, and then it'll come back to me for formatting and final touches. A big part of paralegal work is organizing case files. So 99% of our cases don't go to trial, but we prepare like we're going to and keep everything really organized within that file. And then another big part is really just communicating with the court, other attorneys, and clients. I spend most of my day either on the phone or emailing with opposing counsel, checking in with the court, and of course, dealing with clients. Ready for the next one? Okay, so talking about a paralegal career more generally, I feel like there are three main areas that I want to touch on. And the first, and I think it's the biggest question, is what sort of education do you need for this? And the simple answer is it depends. But the second question I get after that is, do I need a paralegal certification or certificate? And my answer is no. So I had no issue getting into this field without one. The circumstances that I see people requiring paralegal certifications are when they're coming from either associate degrees or maybe even just have a high school degree, and they need that sort of extra certification. In my experience, coming from a four-year institution like Penn State, you really don't need that because the skills that you would learn in that certification program, you have from a liberal arts degree. And there are firms, don't get me wrong, that do require that, but I would say the vast majority do not. Instead, they're looking at, if you have a strong academic background and coming from a school like Penn State, usually they'll even waive it. So I would suggest, even when you're applying to firms that are asking for that, just apply anyway. Because I've gotten interviews at places that said they require a certificate and they took me anyway. So don't let that deter you. And like I said, in my experience, you don't need it. What you do need are the next few things I'm going to talk about. So organization is number one, and I'm sure you've heard it and you'll hear it again. You need to be very, very organized. Being a paralegal, there is a lot of administrative work that you do. So you are supporting attorneys. You're not in a role where you're independently contributing to this firm. You're sort of working for or under attorneys. That being said, you really need to keep everything organized. There's so much that comes in through you as the gatekeeper of the firm that you need to make sure gets to the right attorney, gets in the right file. It's really, really important that you're organized. Going hand in hand with that is the ability to prioritize. So, being able to multitask. And let's say, client A has a court case tomorrow, client B has a court case next week, and they both are calling you nonstop, asking you to get through to the attorney where they need something from you. Obviously, you need to recognize that client A's matter comes first, because that's who's on next. So being able to juggle a lot and prioritize for your attorneys is really important. I think I sort of touched on attention to detail, but especially when you're drafting things, which you'll be asked to do, there are certain things, the legal profession is very meticulous. So being really, really careful in everything that you do. Next, verbal and written communication. So by verbal, I mean being able to communicate with other attorneys, with judges' chambers, with your clients. You need to be able to build a rapport and be able to get the information that you need out of each of those sources. As a paralegal, you will have contact with the judges and other attorneys. So obviously maintaining that professionalism and being able to communicate well, as well as written communication, is really important. So like I said, most of my day is emails and phone calls. So, being able to email effectively and even writing up any internal or external documents, including the pleadings, is important. Next would be research skills. So this is something, as a caveat too, you learn on the job. You're not expected to learn this before you go into a law firm. They will teach you, but being able to just having general research skills will help you. Legal research is very specific, and it's something, like I said, you'll learn on the job, but having a background in research is very, very beneficial to you because you will be sifting through quite a few platforms for one case that you need. You need to find that needle in the haystack. And another skill that I don't hear talked about that much, but I think it's really important to note, is that the legal profession requires a higher level of sensitivity and confidentiality. Everything that you hear from your clients is confidential. So you can't come home one day and just be talking to, your significant other and be like, "Ugh, Karen was calling me 50 times today off the hook about her husband who's cheating on her with the babysitter." Like, you can't be sharing information just willy-nilly. So it is people's livelihoods, and that goes across any area of law, really. So just maintaining that confidentiality, and of course being really responsible with the information. And that also goes to attention to detail. If someone is sending you something via email, you need to make sure it doesn't end up, sent to someone else that's not supposed to see it. So those are the main skills. And then I talked a little bit about main tasks, but I'll go through it a little more generally. Communicating with clients, I think, is pretty straightforward, but as a paralegal, you're going to be sort of the gatekeeper of the law firm. So you'll have the first interaction with clients. And it's really important that you make it a good one. You want to be able to establish a rapport with them because you need information from them. And the more forthcoming they are with you, the better you can do your job. And again, I think everyone knows this, but organizing files for trial or for depositions or anything, this is a fun part for me, and I hate to admit it because it shows how type A I am, but there is something about a label maker and Post-its and just getting things color coded that I absolutely love. So that is something you will definitely be doing in your role. Legal research, I already beat that to death. And then intakes and interviews, that's sort of what I was talking about before, when you're talking to clients and getting information out of them. And again, the big thing is, and you will learn this too, you are not expected to know how to draft a motion. You will learn that in your specific area of law when you are a paralegal at that firm. But really strong writing skills will help you, of course, to be able to pick that up quicker. Okay. All right. So I know that this is about, paralegal careers, but I would be remiss to not talk about this. So I started law school in 2020. So I had taken 2 years off between law school and between undergrad and law school. And there are so many takeaways from that I want to share with you if you are considering law school, or maybe you're not thinking about it now, but you could be in the future. That was the best decision that I ever made, was to not go straight through to law school after undergrad. And for a couple of reasons. The first is that when I did graduate from Penn State, I didn't go right into my paralegal role. I actually worked for a short time as a recruiter, recruiting for HR and legal roles. So it did give me that sort of confirmation that was what I wanted to do, be in the legal field. But again, I still didn't know. And even at my time at Penn State, everything that I did pointed to law school, but I still wasn't sure. And I remember sitting in Katie's office saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I want to go to law school. I just can't make the decision. I was thinking about other graduate programs, but at that point, I just wasn't sure. So I took the time. I decided to get some work experience, and truly it was the best decision I ever made. And now that I'm in law school, I can look back on that and say, every decision led to it. But certainly working as a paralegal was, the nail in the coffin. I knew at that point I wanted to do law school. I was capable of doing law school, and I was going to. And when I applied, I can't stress enough how impressed schools were that I already had legal experience under my belt. And because of that, I was able to secure a substantial merit scholarship where I'm going now. And to all of the schools that I did apply to, I also got money. And I do believe honestly that part of that had to do with the fact that I had legal experience. And really any work experience is good, but if you know that legal is what you want to do, definitely try it out before you go to law school, because it's not for everybody. So that being said, it was definitely a great decision, and one that I would suggest, or in my personal opinion, I think that it is a good idea to take some time between undergrad and law school. And as I had mentioned before, I'm actually doing it part-time. So I am not doing the typical trajectory, that's the 3-year law school program. My program actually runs for 4 years, and I do it at night and on weekends. And I think there's pros and cons, of course, to both programs. Full-time, of course, you're done in 3 years. You're able to focus on it completely. But what I found was I was already working and I didn't want to stop losing, or I didn't want to start losing income. I was already, making money. I didn't want to stop and not have an income for 3 years while I went to law school. So that was the catalyst behind my decision. Of course, that leads me into my third point, which is how do you balance that? And it's a lot, and I would be lying if I said it wasn't. It is definitely a lot. Like I said, I work 9 to 5 and then I go at night and on weekends to law school. But since I'm already in that legal field now, during the day, it's a really easy transition at night to be in that mindset. And I do think that it's made me think of things differently in law school and made me a stronger student going back. Next one. All right, so at this point, I know you're all saying that being a paralegal sounds amazing. It's the best career, so glamorous. So now what? So my suggestions for you, if you think that this is a career path that you want to explore, first would be narrow down what area of law that you may be interested in. And you don't need to know this right away. But for me, it was taking Karen Bloom's Crim 423 class that made me realize I had an interest in domestic violence. And because of that, it led me to the area of law that I'm in, which is family and matrimonial. So I didn't even know that that area of law existed. I'm sure I did, but didn't put the two together. So start thinking about what you are gravitating towards in your classes, or maybe, outside interests, an area of law that you may be interested in, because there are so many. That being said, how do you figure it out? So big proponent of getting involved on campus, as you could see by my laundry list of activities. Get involved. There are so many organizations on campus, and even if it's maybe not something that you're totally invested in, maybe just sign up and then they have a speaker that you want to see, or they're putting on a presentation that may give you more insight into that area. And you don't need to know that it's an area of law. Like, everything is an area of law. So if you're just interested in art, there's obviously law for that. So it doesn't need to be so specific. Okay, next. So take classes. I'm assuming that since most of you are liberal arts students, or all of you, that you already have to take some of these classes, but my suggestion would be anything that can expose you to the legal system. So I know there's like a courts class, I took sentencing. Those are really important because they translate to any area that you end up going into, and it's good to have any background that you can. Additionally, if you are going to take the LSAT, I would suggest you take classes in logic. I did not do this, but I know that there are philosophy classes and sociology classes that probably would have been beneficial to have under my belt. And I remember one class, my comparative politics class, talked a little bit about game theory, and I remember seeing it on the LSAT and I was like, wow, I know this. So it is good to just be comfortable with the material and not be seeing it for the first time when you're applying or in your job. And the one other thing I want to note is that paralegal positions are not positions that you need to apply early to. I remember being in my senior year and all of my SMEAL friends were getting job offers for Deloitte in like September. And I was sitting in Katie's office freaking out because I didn't have a job yet. These are not the kind of positions that hire that way. So firms will hire on a need basis. And that being said, don't apply for a paralegal job in January when you're graduating in May. You can wait until April or May to apply, and there will still be plenty of options for you. So that's just the one caveat I wanted to add there. And then Katie, I'm ready for the next slide. So I tried to breeze through that pretty fast to leave time for questions. But I wanted to also, and I'll put this in the chat too, this is my contact info. You can reach out to me, you can email me, we can connect on LinkedIn if you have any questions. But I'll turn it back to you, Katie.
Thank you so much, Brittany, and thank you for putting that in the chat. I really appreciate it. So going to open up Q&A now, and anyone is welcome to turn off their camera or put it in the chat, whichever you're comfortable with. So we will open that up now because I always have questions. And Brittany did sit in the chair right behind me, so she wasn't making that up. So you're all welcome to sit in the chair behind me. One of the questions I had, Brittany, just to get us started was, you know, in finding those paralegal positions, what's a great resource for that? Would you say job board, networking? Where should we be looking?
Yeah, so I pretty much looked everywhere, and I think that there's no shortage of these roles posted on those job boards. So I would say you could start there for sure. There's so many roles that you can, and also you can narrow down what type of, if you know what type of law you're interested in, you can narrow it down that way to search for paralegal roles, even legal assistant, law assistant, those sort of jobs. It's not strictly that job title. So definitely like Indeed, all of those job boards, but I also would suggest networking for sure. And even just if you know a firm or you see somewhere that, you know, you're interested in this firm or this type of law, go on their website and just see if they have careers posted, because sometimes the firms don't post on the job boards, but they will put on their website, you know, careers, paralegal opening, and just reach out. And that's what I did too. Just reaching out to firms and asking them if they were looking for a paralegal. But yeah, there's no shortage on the job boards either.
I'll remind everybody here too that Brittany is an alumni mentor. So she's a formalized member of our alumni mentor program in the College of the Liberal Arts. You can find that on our website. So connecting and building a network and having a mentor can also be very helpful through that process too. You can have a Brittany all the time through the mentor program. So we did just get a question. So what does the application process look like? I'm guessing, is this specifically for a job posting?
Oh, I could talk about both.
Yeah, thanks.
And also just a shout out to my mentee who is on this call, Lauren. Who's my second mentee, and I had 2 mentors. So yes, I'm quite familiar with the program. So the application process for a paralegal role is, I mean, it depends, of course, by the firm, and there's so many different requirements. I would say what you could expect in a standard process would be, you know, submitting a resume. Probably they'll ask you for a cover letter. If you're coming straight out of college, what I've noticed is they will ask for a transcript. Most of the other roles, not really. And then, you know, a couple interviews. You can expect probably to interview with administrative staff. So, you know, an office manager or someone that you would be working closely with in that administrative role. And then probably a couple of attorneys or maybe a partner, depending on the structure of the firm. I would say most of them did 1 or 2 interviews for me. And yeah, and then I won't go too deep into the law school application process, but there is a lot you need to do. It takes a couple of months. The big things, obviously, the LSAT you need to take. You need to get letters of recommendation. You need to write a personal statement. Pretty much all the things you did for undergrad, and then you submit it through a different portal. It's like the Common App, but for law schools, which is really nice. And most law schools don't require an interview, but some do.
Brittany, did you connect with Kathy Garrett when you were here as well?
I did.
Okay.
So I met with Kathy quite a few times, and I went to some info sessions. I would definitely utilize that as a resource if you are thinking of going to law school. And yeah, she was a great resource as well.
Absolutely. Another question is more about the paralegal certification. I'm not sure how much detail you know about that. How do you get that? Do you suggest certain programs if you are interested in doing that? I know Brittany shared that you don't need it necessarily with a bachelor's degree, but this person is seeing that with some big law firms that they do require it. How do you combat that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, I can't really speak so specifically to it because I don't have one. I don't know of specific programs either, I'll be honest with you. But in terms of big law is very, very competitive. So unless you're coming from like a top 10 institution, it's really hard to get in there for any sort of role. And most paralegals they know are going to try to transition into attorneys there. So that being said, I mean, really strong grades would help you at this point. If that's what you want to do, if you want to go into big law as a paralegal, the first thing that they're looking at is grades. Again, with the paralegal certificate, really so few firms require that. And if you are coming out of undergrad, obviously with not a plethora of legal experience, I would suggest that, you know, any internship opportunity that you can pad your resume with would be really helpful.
One of the programs, let's see if I can do this quickly, but one of the programs I share sometimes, and again, I say this, I share the same message Brittany does with it not being necessary, but Villanova has a paralegal program, and I noticed that, you know, it's ABA approved, so I think that's probably something you should be looking for as you're looking into certifications in this area. A lot of times they're going to be virtual, and they're very short programs. So this one's 9 months and completely online in the evening. So think about that, and I would look for a certified program if you are looking. But again, I think the message here is it's not necessary, especially with your bachelor's degree from Penn State. So I think this is your mentee, Brittany. Just in general, for any career, would you recommend taking time between undergrad and grad school for any gap year, any programs?
1,000,000%, and I can't stress it enough. I think there's a pressure, and I certainly put it on myself before graduation to know what I wanted to do, and it's okay to not. Even as a type A person, I was like, I have to know what I'm doing. You don't, you'll figure it out. But I think that what is so important, not only just to get experience, but it gives you a level of maturity and seriousness that you would not have coming straight out of college, going into a grad program. For me, I feel like so much more mature, and I take it much more seriously, and I treat it like it's a job as opposed to school. So I think that that's transferable to any grad program, any area, you know, of any career. I think making sure that that's for you before you go and spend a ton of money is a phenomenal idea.
For sure. I think it's important to have your why all figured out before that investment. Great questions. Anyone else have a question? When would you suggest taking the LSAT, Brittany?
So I mean, I took it after I graduated. I know that for a couple of years, like you could take it this year and not apply to law school for another 2 years if you wanted to. I would suggest taking it closer to the time that you are actually applying. So if you are planning on going straight out of college, I would suggest that you take it your senior year as early as possible. even in the summer. For me, I took it in November, and I took it once, and that was a very big gamble. I would, if I had to do it over again, thank God I don't, I would take it maybe in like September to give myself enough room in case I had to take it again. And I knew what score I wanted. If I didn't get it, I was taking it again. But my goal was to get all of my applications out by December for the same reason that you would want to in undergrad, the funding. There's a lot more funds earlier on in the application cycle than there are at the end. And that's true with any grad program. So my suggestion would be take it as early as possible. That way you know where you stand. And if you need to take it again, you do.
Great advice. I also put in the chat the link to our Career Enrichment Network YouTube playlist. And we recently had another event with law students giving similar advice to what Brittany was saying, with planning ahead and making sure you know why you're going. So that would be a good listen if you haven't attended. Any other questions? Brittany, give everybody a second to see if they have anything in mind. Do you have any parting words for those interested in the paralegal career itself, the longevity of it? I know you've decided to go into with law school, but a career specifically in paralegal without that additional education, what does that look like?
Yeah, so there are so many career paralegals, and I think it's a really lucrative and a really strong field to go into. There will always be a need for paralegals, and really you're doing most of the attorney's work. So you're basically an attorney without all the negative repercussions of, when the case doesn't go the way the client wants it to. But I think what's great about a paralegal role is that it's so versatile. You can do it in any area of law, across any industry, even things that you wouldn't think about. So, having a career as a paralegal is a phenomenal career. And again, I'm sorry, I can't talk for a second there. You get more comfortable in the role as you go through it. And the more comfortable you are, the more responsibilities you can take on. And it's really great to be able to work so hands-on with clients and so hands-on with legal documents without, being an attorney. So it's pretty much one step down, and it's so important. Truly, paralegals are the backbones of law firms. That's where all of the work is being done. So it's definitely a great career path. And again, what I think is so great is that it's versatile in that, let's say you're doing family law for 5 years as a paralegal, and you're like, you know what? I think I might be interested in corporate litigation. You can make that switch. And you can go across so many different industries just by having this one set of skills. So it doesn't limit you at all. And that's what I think is really great about the position.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that perspective. That's one of the things we share with our students who think they might be interested in law school, is that there are other avenues that may not require that level of education that still have you engaging within the legal field. So, and that's obviously a big one, but there are other opportunities as well. Well, thank you so much, Brittany. I really appreciate it. It's so good to see you. I'm going to stop recording at this time.